What's up, Workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're going to be diving into the conversation about Blue Mage as it's evolved to level 70 and seems to be picking up some level of popularity, so we figured we'd talk about it. But first, Chris, who do we got to sponsor today's video?
Guys, I'm sure you have heard of Audible. They are the leading provider of spoken entertainment worldwide. They have everything from audiobooks to comedy to podcasts, but I am currently using them and they are currently bringing this video to you. I am currently listening to Theft of Swords by Michael J. Sullivan, narrated by the fantastic Tim Gerard Reynolds. It's a nice adventure that I listen to while I'm mowing the lawn or doing something in the garden, and it's something that can help keep me immersed in a fantastic world the way video games do when I am away from my keyboard and mouse. That brings my entertainment to here. So it's just a great way of taking that entertainment on the go. And if you would like to try it, keep in mind that new members can always try Audible for up to 30 days on them. So definitely go give that a shot. If you'd like to go ahead and support Work to Game in the process, I encourage you to visit audible.com/work2game or text work to game to 500 to get started.
Today, let's dive into the conversation about the Blue Mage. Coming into, if you guys have not seen the history of Blue Mage, a very mixed reception to the job itself, right? At the end of the day. And there's always been this question about what's the finished thought look like. Now, we are at level 70. There are insane skills, insane combos, and insane damage. And then yesterday, you rated Tula Time. And what's her main now?
She when we showed up, she goes, I'm actually a Blue Mage main. And that phrase comes down to where do you spend your time? That phrase comes down to where do you spend your content? Now, I think she said kinda at the end of that, which I appreciate. But because you don't get story all the time, because you get story for a couple hours every 16 weeks, if you're not doing Duty Finder, if you're not doing current max level content, everything level 70 and prior, if you're doing old savages, if you're grinding things for glamour, if you're grinding things for old mounts, old extremes, you can Blue Mage main all of that, especially if you have a group of friends to go progress into that, because it is 100% Party Finder approved. Mm-hmm. So I think it came out under the term limited, which I think was unfortunate. I think it's somewhere between when you say limited with a car, which is that's a package, that's a good thing. They put that on there. That's branding. That is planted on the side of the car as a good thing. And then something that is meant to mean the word restricted, right? Mm. The word that there's going to be a lesser version of this. And it is somewhere in between the two. I think in many ways, it's one of the most social jobs added to the game, because so much of the content around it requires playing with other players that you organize and plan and seek out. It's very social in that way. But in the I'm going to get tossed in with random people, the Duty Finder way, it's not that. It's so starkly antisocial.
So I've seen it continually used time and time again in terms of clearing content quickly because of its power. Now, that does require the player to go out and about and acquire the skills and do these challenges. So it has, in a way, it's like a very solo piece of content that leads into a very social piece of content, right? Because it's okay, I got to go do the carnival, which you've been doing. Sure. Carnival is a very, okay, I have to budget that. So it isn't a very fluid in its design. You can't go take people in the carnival with you to this day, and if you did, that would break up the challenge that they've specifically designed it for. That's actually right. As an aside, very briefly, why I love the critical engagement system over that of what you were actually, guys, his post for Lazy Peon Part 2 is up today. Basically, Lazy Peon, I want hundreds of players all on the screen and absolute chaos. That's a great thing to want, but when it comes down to real memorable, it's oh, how did we bring it together? They have mechanics. Otherwise, the constant critique is it's just a Zerg fest. Nobody's having any fun, and that's what that devolves into. Unless you design it saying there's only going to be 48 people here. This is only going to be done this one way. And so, regarding Boja, even regarding Blue Mage, having that designed for one person, having content that they've now taken these raids, these old raids, all the way through Omega now, allowing us to have that, people can go and challenge that with Blue. It only, to me, makes me want and wish for Blue at 80. And when we talk about limited, okay, what's protected, right? Because that obviously breaks the game. But what's protected about the current raid setup, especially with the COVID delay, especially with going into Endwalker, like how cool would it be if they just said, hey, it's summertime. Everybody's already gotten the world first. Yep. Y'all want to do the raid? Here's Blue 80.
Keep it out of the last 4 Edens.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it out of the last 4 Savages.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it out of all Ultimates.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it out of the most recent Extremes. Anything that is tied to current gear progression.
Yeah.
Anything that is tied to a fresh level 80 trying to push to Abyss. Keep it out of all of that content. That way that content still has the maximum number of people looking for groups with each other. That way that content is respected as far as difficulty goes. Keep it out of all of that, but keep it out of the 2 dungeons that are in the expert roulette. Keep it out of those 2. But there's a whole lot of other level 80 content that is not what I just described. And so it's effectively always 1, 2, 3 patches behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just keep it trailing 16, 30 weeks in the past. And I think it'd be fine. Get it to 80, get us out into these zones, because I think that would be a lot of fun personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see any problem with that. And so that does mean that it would typically come out around maybe like the 0.3 patch. It would be allowed to go through the initial content of the expansion, and then maybe it would trail 2 patches behind to be safe. And then in the 0.5, go ahead and let it creep up into 0.4. And then in 0.55, let it into 0.5. Like just that way for that true gap out that we have at the end of every expansion in the hype time, new players are showing up and it's just us just blowing things up. Like, have you played with Ultra Vibration yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
I know,
so Ultra Vibration is something that chains off of an ability you get off Chimera. So you freeze everything, then you cast Ultra Vibration and it one-shots things. Like a whole room full of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you haven't been in like a Circus Tower run, where literally like all the ads run in and one blue mage freezes everybody and another blue mage casts Ultra Vibration and it all dies. 2 characters just ran in front and all the other characters in the raid just run right through the room. Mm-hmm. It just dies. It is so much fun. I love that the limited job system lets them break things. And I think a lot of people who are frustrated with the limited job system was because they designed parts 1, 2, and 3, mm-hmm. 50, 60, 70, and then they released 50.
Mm-hmm.
So they wrote, instead of writing the pilot season of a TV show and then deciding whether or not to pick up a second season, and you have to put your best foot forward because otherwise you'll get canceled, they got signed for 3 seasons. And then they released the first season and they left a ton of intentional cliffhangers because they already knew season 2 was coming. So it's a better overall product. But if you only watch season 1, you're not guaranteed to get that same feeling of something that was designed to stand alone, because it was never designed to be that. Yeah. All of these level 50 abilities were designed to integrate with the first 100 and 104. So like there's a static number there that it was a full package. They said when they initially released it, they had already planned out over 100 abilities, and then they gave us a piece. Mm-hmm. And then people were like, well, based on that piece, I don't like the whole system.
Right.
How can you know that?
So there's another side of the story too, is that we still also, I don't think, have seen the finished thought. In regards to that, when they talked about the system, they talked about maybe a Puppet Master or Beastmaster or both. And we were all expecting, especially kind of when we talk about 5.5, Is It Enough, which was our video that, like, we were recording this in advance. So, like, they actually ran on Friday. With 5.5, it's that we were expecting maybe we would see another limited job, like Beastmaster, make its way into the game. We're seeing it in Boja, so it just starts to lead to maybe that, you know, if they were going to delay or cut anything, like they did with Ultimate, in the case of a big delay, an Ultimate delay, that we could also see that kind of pair with the Beastmaster as well. But I want from this system, because the weakness of it, in my mind, isn't that it can't do certain pieces of content. It's that it can't do story. So if you wanted to take and play Blue Mage through Endwalker, you can't. And I think that's a bummer, because if you're loving it and you're having fun with that, who cares? Like, and I'm, you know, I will admit that it's like I'm biased in that regards. I can easily see people saying like, oh, you'll kill fights so easily if you were doing a world's first race to get to the end of the story, then, you know, you've kind of broken it. But then to my point, okay, if you finished that, that's just where I come from. I know the internet's gonna have probably a different opinion, but I think that is being its weakness, and I think the finished thought being that we still need another job in that category, another piece of content. You know, it is content more than a job. I don't think
I'd ever let it go through current story. And the reason for that is I don't want somebody leveling up their Blue Mage to current cap, leveling to 90, and then realizing that they want to play with friends. and those friends want to do content they can't, and now they're stuck leveling an alt. And so I would force people to accidentally always have a typical job at cap.
What if it could only go up to your highest level? Like what? Meaning
like a retainer.
Yeah, like your retainer can only level up to your highest level job, meaning, okay, fine.
That's a valid alternative to that.
Yeah, meaning that it's like, it can still go. It can go up there. But then
obviously... a job. Any job.
Right. And then the other side of the coin is that it just can't do progression-based content. So you're not going to be... Anything that...
Current patch.
That increases your power, that it just doesn't participate in. Okay, fine, cool. Like, that's what that is. So that way you can always respect the speedrunners and the world firsters out there, so that's I think
you could also go let it into ultimates as long as you're not dropping the typical loot and the typical achievements. You could give it its own achievements. I don't even think they need to balance it. A lot of these times they're like, well, we don't want to let people in there if it's impossible.
Yeah.
Let us put the achievement in game. Don't beta test it. Put the achievement in game. Can blue mages kill ultimate?
Yeah.
And then just see. Maybe it's easy. Maybe it goes down day one. Maybe it's like Heaven on High or Palace of the Dead, where we're not sure if every class in the game can do it when it first releases.
That's the other piece
of
content
that I want. Just let the players figure it out. It doesn't need to be balanced, because that's the beauty of the limited job system. If it's broken, it's broken. That was from day one. And I think that's where you hit on wanting to have multiple limited jobs. We don't know what a limited job is and what a blue mage is, because right now they're one and the same.
Right. And
when you get a second limited job, that's where you get to start drawing that Venn diagram and say, okay, in the middle are what the core definition of a limited job is, right? Mm-hmm. And so if a Beastmaster is allowed into Palace of the Dead, that says, okay, limited jobs are allowed into Palace of the Dead. Blue mage is not.
Right.
And so like that starts to let us understand what did they want to be limited job and what specifically was like, this is our dream of what a blue mage is.
Correct. So that's where I'm thinking, and then you brought up like Heaven on High and Deep Dungeon, and it's like, A, I want to continue our adventures into those, but B, like I would love to see Blue Mage being brought in just like how it does normal Party Finder stuff. But man, like that's where it's at. Like I want them to finish the thought with another limited job, so we can stop saying limited is blue, and then it's like blue's a part of this limited system. And then I think Beastmaster would be great. I think Puppet Master would be great. There's a lot of crazy jobs within the lexicon of Final Fantasy that I would love to see brought into that. Hell, I would love to see a version of Summoner brought in to the limited job system, right? Like when we talk about changes that we want for Summoner, that I want for Summoner. Like, I think
a lot of eggs here.
Yeah, a lot of eggs here. But those are just my thoughts in that regards, and that's kind of just like
that would be a neat way to let the jobs really open up. To take the Boja Lost Action system and open it up is to say, when you are in Duty Finder content, you're playing with your typical job stone. And then the limited job system, yes, Blue Mage is always a limited job. But what if there's Black Mage and limited Black Mage? Mm-hmm. And limited Black Mage lets Black Mages go do silly stuff.
Right.
And break things. But you can't take the limited version. So the same way that PvP pares things down, mm-hmm. What if we had something the other way that says, when you're in open world content, you can go unlock the ability to make flare your entire rotation. It's just flare, 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 flare. And it's like, how do I do that? And it's like, well, there's like a quest chain and there's actually another ability that gets dragged onto your bar that you don't have yet. And like it breaks things, and that's fine. And so like, imagine if you had limited summoner, and limited summoner lets you summon like full blown primals. Like you're using the, what are they called in Heaven on High? You're using the little tokens. You're bringing Odin out into the world.
The Magicite.
Yeah. So imagine if Summoner had Magicite, but you can't use Magicite in a 4-man because it just kills the whole dungeon.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, that's too much. But like, you're like, oh, I'm off doing the frog fate or whatever. Yeah, Magicite it up. Who cares? Let's do this.
Let's summon freaking brute justice. Like Colin says, absolutely. I think there's a lot of room to explore. Honestly, I think right now, as we gear up into Endwalker, the future is as bright as it ever can be, because I think when we talk about just finishing the thought, when we finish the thought of the Zodiac Hydaelyn story arc, I think that's going to allow them to say, hey, we've finished that thought. We don't have to continue that thread. We can be free to kind of create and go in different directions. And so who knows what that will end up looking like? Who knows where this could end up going? Yoshi P's teased several things in different interviews that I think will be, when we call back to it in a couple years, go, oh, yeah, he knew what's going on. The guy's got a plan. I'm excited to experience it. I'm looking forward to things. And when we look at is 5.5 enough? last 4 or 5 we had Blue Mage, and now we still have Blue Mage, and it's doing some very interesting things. So it's crazy to see how far we've come. Those are my thoughts. Chris, you got any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, any of you that haven't tried it, or maybe just tried it initially out of the, you've got 2 or 3 spells on the bar, and you're like, well, it doesn't really become my thing. Just know that somewhere around, half the spells or something, it becomes really intriguing. So I'd encourage you to go back and, especially in 5.5, where whatever you've been doing for content may not be enough. You may actually run into some downtime, and Blue Mage is a great way to spend that.
Absolutely. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. For Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope to see you in our next one. But until then,
take care.
All right.